Honourable David Parker being extremely rigorous on this. It's great. And I guess he is a reflection of our Prime Minister as well, who has expressed quite strong and very clear views about further harbour incursion. So both the PM and Mr Parker show every sign that they fully understand the cultural, recreational and environmental values of the Waitemata, and so should we continue to reflect upon that. And that, in my view, is the real legacy here. We often get too preoccupied with the legacy that will be created, that built legacy, and we just totally undervalue the legacy that could be lost. And that is my primary focus, and it continues to be. So I absolutely commend government for pushing harder to achieve the less intrusive variant option. I totally support them in that regard. It's one that we dismissed by expressing a preference on the 23rd, something I think we did a bit early. I know it is difficult as well, and as the Chief Executive has said, our work has been exhaustive, but I welcome government to just demand more answers. This is a tough ask for all involved, and I acknowledge Rod and Fiona's work in leading this. On the motions, Mr Mayor, motion A is just a restatement of our enthusiasm from the 23rd, so we're repeating that. I'm happy to express that again. But on the B, that seeks approval for a specific option to go forward. Now, I'm uncomfortable with that in light of government continuing to undertake its active due diligence, though I understand the work is mostly complete. So I am going to be signalling my abstention on the B. If the words were slightly different, I'd support it, but they are not. I will be abstaining on it. On other matters, I encourage the officials to continue to look at technology which allows removable floating infrastructure that can return the Waitemata to us at some point in the future, be it in full or part of that 2.6 hectare occupation. It's important that Cabinet is provided with accurate information, and thank you, Mayor, for supporting me in making sure that the Planning Committee plan and not a variant of that plan purporting something different is conveyed to the Cabinet. The other thing I'd like to make sure is addressed is that we identify early which bases would not proceed if fewer than 7 challenges signed up, and so there needs to be some criteria for that. No doubt it would be the most intrusive bases in the plan, and in light of the 400% discrepancy between Stats New Zealand data yesterday and that of market economics on the value of cruise to New Zealand and Auckland, I think we do need to review the latest market economic impact evaluation of the America's Cup. And one of the things that I've seen is in the past, when we had an America's Cup, stats data showed no increase in the marine industry returns. So we're told that it's going to in the future with this America's Cup, but way back in 2000 and the next one, the Stats New Zealand data did not show an increase in business. And in terms of super yachts, for example, I think it's 30% of the value is just in fuel transactions. That is a big tanker lining up next to it and pumping in some mobile.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Fletcher.
Why, thank you, Your Worship. I'm very pleased to take part in the debate today, and I again want to commend our officials. Mr Marler has come back to us with a lot of that detailed information that we required that we didn't have on the 23rd of November, and I do appreciate how much pressure all of the parties have been under to be able to assemble this information, so thank you for that. I was going to talk about what I saw were real opportunities. But before I do so, I'd like to address the point that Councillor Collins makes, because here we are at Christmas and he reminds us of the importance of the politics of compassion. And it's actually in the context of that I've decided that I want to speak today. And I was going to talk about facts, but I'm going to talk from my heart about why I'm so enthusiastic about being able to move forward today. And in so doing, I want to recognise some of the risks that others have articulated, but I think that there is a greater risk in doing nothing today. We know anyone who has actually been responsible for the delivery of an enormous project knows how you just get down to just not just days, but hours and minutes to get it off the ground. But I want to talk about, as a girl who grew up in Papakura, as a girl who went to Papakura Central School, and some of the people that I got to know that have actually gone on and had careers as a result of apprenticeships that resulted from the marine industry. And what I would say to you, Councillor Collins, if I may, through your worship, is that when you have exposure to the world, the boating world, it not only just creates opportunities for jobs, and I would have to say I dispute entirely what Councillor Darby has just said. In stats alone, from friends who are in the fabric and textile industry, they go back to 2000 and talk about the yards and yards of fabrics and upholstery and the various industries, not just in actual numbers of apprenticeships. But what my late father drew to my attention and excited me, and my late uncle was in charge of the New Zealand apprenticeship program at that time. He was very upset that we lost a lot of opportunities through apprenticeships. But he thought that the marine industry gave not just the opportunity for jobs and skills, but it was the networking with a whole range of people of an international industry and the aspirations which he likened that he only had when he went off to war, which was a terrible thing, that you had to go off to war to really see the world and see those opportunities. But just now we know how many young people are crewing and sailing on yachts around the world and how it's opening up their eyes, and it's not just the job at that moment, but the sense of opportunity when they return to New Zealand and come back and think how we can actually go into the next stage. And I'd put it to you, Councillor Collins, that I don't believe the waterfront, which we're all now taking for granted, would have happened, and the development and the opening up of it and the passion that we all feel about the Hauraki Gulf, but for Sir Peter Blake and that first defence that we had of the America's Cup. That was the catalyst for so much of the change, the sense of hope and possibility and celebration of our beautiful waters and our Gulf Islands. I believe that has done, and I won't name names, but for those people that I grew up with in Papakura, and it was a real cross-section of rich and poor and ethnic diversity long before Papakura back in the 1950s was a very different place. But so many people's lives, and I know going back, it was, now it might be West Auckland, so many of those jobs actually people came from the south. And it's not just in the marine industry, it's in all of the other accompanying industries that go with it, and tourism. Because for each one of those super yachts that comes down, there is a real desire to actually experience the best of Aotearoa. And this is something, and I see AT'd here today, and I really feel quite excited for how this might actually substantially change the lives and aspirations of a lot of young people who may not actually have those opportunities. So in disputing what has been said about the refits of super yachts and so forth, I have confidence in the Mayor and the CEO to conclude these negotiations. We've had the evidence put forward to us. I believe that the legacy issues have been canvassed, but in conclusion, Mr. Your Worship, there will be a lot of noise. We know from experience, those of us who've been around a while, there will be a lot of naysayers with what the council investing in the America's Cup. But that noise will dissipate when you see the joyous occasions and the celebrations and that sense of pride, I think, with Auckland, is if we can get this right. We saw how San Francisco got it so terribly wrong. It went with a dispersed option, and it didn't engage. And I think what we are having from Mr. Marler and the officers is some excellent work, and I know that you wanted me to wrap up now, so I will conclude. But I would really encourage everyone to support this because it puts you in a stronger negotiating position with the government, and I'm sure that the Minister, when he actually has all of the information assembled, will make, and you will encourage him to make the right decision. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Linda Cooper.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For me, what's really important is we've been told over and over again, if we don't meet a timeline with an agreed option today, we'll not be in time to actually deliver this event for New Zealand. And as the chair of the Regulatory Committee and an RMA Commissioner, I'm absolutely well aware that we can't put two options forward, because if we change anything, we'll have to go back for a variation, which will be another few months added onto the end of that, as well as the cost. For me, the Wynyard option, I mean, it's in very fine print on this, but it says relocation of hazardous substances industry estimated up to $100 million. And that is the issue. And we're also obliged, one, to give them notice, and if we don't let them work out their lease agreement, we have to pay them out for that, and we actually have to find another place to put these hazardous substances, which is another round of resource consents, etc., etc. That's been played down. So that is a huge consideration. Who in Auckland will want these things near them? They wouldn't. So for me, we decided that we would support the America's Cup by offering to have it here and doing the necessary work. So we've done that. Now we need to do it in the most expedient and cost-effective way. And I'm really well aware there's been a whole lot of trade-offs already. This isn't what Team New Zealand wanted in the first place. They've said, okay, we'll take this, if that's what you can offer. So we've already had them saying, look, that's okay, not exactly what we want. For me, just working a little bit on the Wynyard point, which we've proposed here, leaves the rest of it open for development as planned. I mean, I'm not really supportive of putting great big bases on there, covering up the current car park. It's just too big, and that's possibly undoable. We need to keep that Wynyard headland point clear so that we can develop it and make it into a beautiful park. So for me, it's pretty much, the Mayor's put up this option. We can't wait for the Minister to make his decision. And we've also been told that even if the Minister did want to change, he wouldn't get a resource consent in time. And I'm really not understanding how he could apply for a resource consent that wasn't on his land anyway. This is owned by Auckland Council, this land. It's owned by the people of Auckland. It's not owned by the Crown. So I don't even know if that's possible. I'd have to change quite a few laws to be able to do that, and that would take time. So for me, I'll support the option that the Mayor's put up, and let's get on with it.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Bill Cashmore.
Well, very briefly, Mr Mayor, because a lot of it has been said, what is possible, and Rod and the team have given us a possible option. What is improbable and probably therefore impossible is things around the tank farm. Those of you, and as many of you have walked around there, have seen those massive structures and the challenges that they would bring. Councillor Cooper has mentioned the cost of relocation, not just the tanks, but then you have to relocate the car park like with like, because that's in the leases. These are real challenges and not something easily or quickly sorted out. If we cast our minds back what the Viaduct Basin was like before we owned the Cup, and the great work that the council did then in creating a special place that it is now. We have an opportunity to carry that forward into the Wynyard Basin, to create that legacy. This will not be just about one defence. I am optimistic we will have several defences over hopefully decades and grow an industry that will support the people of all around Auckland on all sorts of different ventures, job opportunities and investments. These are very real opportunities, very real employment, very real investments. Folks, remember the art of what is possible and what is probable. This is what can be achieved, and we need to make a decision today. First decision, who would not support the defence of the Cup here in Auckland, the city of sails? And who would not support the most viable option we have before us? The most viable. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cashmore. Councillor Hulse.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to be supporting the recommendations. I think the Deputy Mayor's put it really well, and for me there's probably only a couple of things that need to be said. Number one, New Zealand is watching, and I think, you know, Auckland has the reputation for thinking it's all about Auckland. There is a New Zealand Inc. component to this that we can't ignore, and I think we need to look at the opportunities for the rest of New Zealand, and you know, we're inclined to be a little bit blinkered around that. So it's for that reason I'm supporting it. Secondly, I just want to pay respect to my colleague, Efeso Collins. Absolutely. The South and the West, our people are questioning our support for this, and with very good reason. I respect that and I understand that. However, we could not do anything by saying the money would be better spent on the homeless. Mr Mayor, I want to pay respect to your commitment to dealing with homelessness in Auckland, and, you know, $500,000 this year, and, you know, I don't know what our total is now with your project on Housing First. We are busy housing hundreds of people, but that doesn't happen if we don't look after the economy as well. And despite the debates around the amount of money that this will generate, there is no question that this will make the tills ring and the money will go to government. It doesn't actually come straight back to this council, it goes to government. So that's my third and last point. We need to absolutely hold the government's feet to the fire on this one. Every time something big happens that we squeeze a bit of money out for, like Masters Games, the government gets a huge slug of money. We're just saying for Auckland, can we have that back, thank you, because on behalf of the people of New Zealand, we are putting a huge amount of work, energy, time and commitment into making this happen. And just to back up my colleague, Councillor Fletcher, it is actually our Westies and our people out south who work in the cafes, hospitality, the yachting industry, the construction industry that will benefit from this. Yep. So it is tough. These are big money people, and this is a big money venture. However, we need to think a little bit broader than this council chamber. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse. Councillor Casey.
When I joined this council, I didn't make a speech, I sang a song, and it was about the America's Cup, and I'm going to sing it again, with your permission. It's about what Efeso was talking about, really. It's about remembering outside of the America's Cup. There's an underclass in Auckland that struggle. So this is just a reminder. I will be supporting the recommendations, but I acknowledge Efeso. The sun had gone down on the boats in the harbour, and cup parties rocked on down by the sea, when I met about daybreak an old man on a park bench, who asked me, what's in it for me? He was under a bundle of rags and old papers, and he asked if I had 50 cents for a tea. Are you here for the cup? He said without smiling, 'cause I wonder what's in it for me. There's a mum in South Auckland with 5 hungry children. Her dole's not enough to get food for the tea. She hears the corks pop on the viaduct basin, and she yells out, what's in it what's in it for me? There's a dad working 12-hour shifts at the meatworks. To make his ends meet, he's a cleaning job or 3. He hears of the millions flowing into the harbour, and he mutters, what's in it for me? There's an old mate of mine who can't get out his front door. He's been waiting for 2 years just so's he can see his taxi's fund sailing while the hospitals languish, and he whispers, what's in it for me? The old man turned to me, his eyes filled with tears, and he said, in my life, lass, at least I've been free. Never forget those who are trapped by their poverty. For them, keep on asking, what's in it for me? When I die, keep asking, what's in it for me? Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor.
Thank you very much for that musical addition, Councillor Casey. Councillor Stewart.
There was no bum note.
No, exactly, just point of order.
Sorry.
Councillor Stewart. Sorry.
Tammy, you're going to just put the, oh, it's up there.
Well, on you, Cassie.
The amendment B, so just want to add in the words in the Wynyard Point location options.
Thank you. Councillor Newman.
Chair,
Oh, sorry, that's an amendment, so we should
Yes,
we
Deal
should
with the amendment.
deal with the amendment
Amendment first.
first. So
Don't go
it
point
does
of
give
order.
people the chance to speak to the amendment. Do you want to speak further to it, Councillor Stewart?
No, but I think councillors say you've seconded the amendment.
yeah, but you moved it.
We need a seconder for it.
Yeah,
Are
I'm
you
happy.
seconding it?
It's been
Councillor Sayers?
seconded. Yeah.
So it's been moved and seconded. There's now the opportunity to speak to it. Councillor Walker.
sure. So the merit of this amendment, councillors, is it enables the further consideration of Wynyard Point. I draw your attention to E in the recommendations, which notes, and I'll just read it out with your forbearance, Mr Mayor, note that the Crown remains committed to further investigating the Wynyard Point, in brackets, variant, close brackets, option, and will not reach a final view until further due diligence on this option has been completed. So the Wynyard Point option is very live. I'd suggest it's live as far as the government is concerned, and I'd suggest it's very live as far as the public of Auckland is concerned. And if we have that on the table, then the council has some flexibility going forward, certainly as it goes to the consenting process. And while the Chief Executive may make some comments around costs and the like, frankly, I think that keeping this option in, to use Sir Peter Blake's phrase, will help to make the boat go faster. Will help to make the boat go faster, because it means that we've got the government on side, we can pursue some work in advance of certainly the government's decision around Wynyard Point. It means that we're better prepared around options. We have flexibility. And I would suggest, as far as the consenting process is concerned, this is an option that we are going to have to explore and do due diligence on anyway. Because as I mentioned earlier, the consenting process requires us, as the authority that will lodge the consent, conceivably also with the government, but maybe not, to consider other options. And it is not at odds with anything else in the recommendations. So my concluding remark, it is complementary, certainly complementary to E, enables flexibility, and in my view will place us in good stead going forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Further comment on it? I'll make a comment if there's no other comment. Councillor Watson, were you?
No. Got a
Yeah.
question.
Uh,
It's up there.
yeah.
My name is up there just for a question.
Yep, sure.
Yeah.
Councillor Filipino.
So my question in regards to this is, what happens if this goes through? I'm assuming through the debate that we've had, is that that Stephen ended up saying, the CEO said that we then get in a position where, one, I think, Rod, you mentioned that there might be two costs associated depending on the resource consent. So can you just confirm what they are for me? I know I heard right, but I want you to confirm what I did hear, please.
I confirm that there would be additional costs if we are going to further examine another option. And if that eventuates into a second resource consent, then obviously costs similar to the consent that we're currently proposing will be incurred.
Okay, and Your Worship, a question to you, Your Worship, in regards to negotiations with the government. Again, they haven't settled on a location as yet, have they?
No.
No.
That's absolutely correct.
And so for us, by at least putting and indicating to them our preference, that would, I believe, go a long way in regards to any negotiation with the Crown. And I think that's the better position. Am I correct or not?
Yeah, maybe if I take a call and speak to your questions when you finish.
Yep, because then I
Councillor.
will then
Yeah.
take a call as well for comment.
Okay. I don't so much have a problem with the amendment here, in the sense that the discussion that I'll be having with David Parker next week will involve both options. It will involve both options. I have a bigger problem if this amendment were to say we should put in 2 resource consents.
Doesn't say
And it doesn't say that, so I want to make that absolutely clear as a reason why I feel I can support that amendment. If it said to put in 2 resource consents, then the best advice that I have is that it won't work in the time frame that we've got. It will cost money, it won't work, and we won't be able to get it through in time. So while this says that will be on the table, yes, it'll be on the table anyway. I do want to make one clarification, and it comes back to Councillor Lee's initial speech on this. He said it was the preference of the government. It is absolutely not true that the government has ever said to me that this is their preference. They have said this is an option that we would like to examine fully to see whether or not it would work. And I was an active supporter, as the Chief Executive can attest, to fully exploring that option. We now have on the table, given to us by officials, a range of substantive points to say why we would really struggle to get a resource consent through in time if we were to include this option. And I am obliged to listen to and to follow that advice, because it's the evidence that they're putting up. They are the people with the expertise on council that tells me, look, if you tried to put 2 resource consents in, we would never meet that time frame. But I'm happy with this amendment in the sense that that will be under discussion anyway. This is not a conflict between us as a council and the government. It's a desire to find the best outcome for the country and the city. And that is the way the discussion has been conducted to date. That is the way the discussion will continue to be conducted. But we have real practical limitations in terms of the time frame that we've got. And I'm advised that we don't have the time to put in another resource consent and get it through under the standard procedures of the Resource Management Act. So I'm happy to support this on the basis that that is on the table for discussion anyway, but I'm also absolutely adamant that we will be presenting to the government, as we already have, the practical problems with trying to pursue 2 separate options when we're running up against the time constraint. So this amendment, from my point of view, is fine, but will I be arguing the point of view that we cannot do this on time because of reasons 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5? Yes, of course I'll be doing that, because if I ignored the advice I was getting from council officials and planners and our legal team, I wouldn't be doing justice to this council. So I hope that
So-
answers your question.
Well, so, Your Worship, prior to you taking the call, I was going to ask